Good afternoon from another sunny day in Bristol. I'm Robert Radford and this is 50 Years of Chess, and I've got a second game against Michael Passmore to show you. I've already told you lots about Mike on the other video, so I won't go through that again except to say what a great guy he was and a good friend, always smiling. So I'll show you what happened in this game, and I was white. Now, Mike was rated around 1630 at this time, and I was 1705, something like that. This was back in 17th of February 2009. Yeah, that's right. So, I began with c4. Mike played knight f6, and I played knight c3. d5, c takes d, knight takes d. g3, so I've gone for the fianchetto line here, and I like to play it when I can. c6, bishop g2, e5. So Michael seems to have a set plan on what he's doing here. Getting his bishops out very quickly, I think. e3, bishop e6, knight on g to e2, bishop e7, castle, castle, d5. ed, knight takes, d4, queen, d7. Now, what happens from here is rapid trade-offs, which led us into a very quick endgame with no real middle game whatsoever. I don't know why, but it just happened like that. Knight takes on e6, queen takes, knight takes on d5, and c takes d5, queen takes d5, queen takes queen, bishop takes queen on d5. So I've come out of there pawn out. I think Mike was a little bit short on his arithmetic there, miscalculated, but never mind. So he's got knight c6, bishop takes knight, pawn takes, and bishop d2. So I've got my rooks now connected like he has. If it weren't for the pawn, it'd be dead even, but the fact that I've got 4 against 3 on the king side is very nice, and he's got 2 isolated pawns giving him 3 islands, whereas I've got 2 islands of pawns. So he's played bishop f6, which means I've got to really play bishop c3, which he forces off. So now I've got 3 islands of pawns as well. So rook, he's grabbing the d1, d8 file. So rook d8 from rook d1 from f1, king f8, rook d4, c5. Now I had a little think about this for about 5 minutes, and I thought, why not rook to c4? Yeah, why don't I go into rook c4? Which I did. And I thought, why not? It's going to keep him tied up, defending this pawn, while I do other things. So he's brought the rook on a8 to c8 to protect that pawn. Now I brought the other rook into the game with rook b1. Rook e2, taking a look at my a pawn, which I pushed on, and he won't be able to attack because that beautiful rook on c4 is it can't be touched. Only a king could get there and move it, if that were possible. So it's a very, very interesting rook there on c4, and this is what he's doing, is bringing his king up to try and get to d5 and make me move it. So I've gone rook check, and he's brought the rook back because he wants to keep going forward to king, and if he goes to e6, I can just take the pawn on a7. So I've gone back now, hitting that pawn twice, and now he's moving that king up, as I said he might try to do, so that it frees the rook, one of the rooks, to be able to move So I've gone e4 just to keep him out of that d5 square. Mike's played double the rooks. Rook c7, f3, rook c6. I brought the rook back so as I can kick that king away from that square, which is very good for him. His advanced king is not too bad because even though I got an advantage on the bar on the right there, being a pawn up, it's only sort of like 1.4 favourability to white here in this game. So he's moved the king anyway because he knew the check would come. So now there's a chance for me to get my king into the game. King f2, rook d8, king e3. It's a waste of time of coming down to d1 because every one of my pawns is protected. So he's played f6, f4. He's played g6, g4, rook d1. That can only be to harass my king. So I'm going to play rook here to d2, hoping to swap off because otherwise it's going to be a nuisance if he plays rook e1 check and I've got to move my king or play. I don't want to play rook e2 because at some point he may be able to double his rooks up on that file. And he obliged me by taking the rook, and I took. It's not a good idea when you're pawn down endgame to take off one of your two rooks. Interesting, he's pushed his f pawn on. This is disruptive as it's going to mess up my pawns. But I'm going to just play pawn takes pawn, then with my king up, which is what I've done to e3. So he's dropping his rook back a square so that he can perhaps move his rook to somewhere else along that file, along that rank. So I've got a plan here where I go on e4 takes on f5. And he's gone king takes f5. And this is where my rook can come back into the game now, as it's not, I'm not going to win this game if I just keep it there. So rook to e4, rook c6, and now rook e5 check. This is better. This is looking much better for me. So he's gone back to f6. So rook to h5 to just harass that pawn, make his king go away from the centre. And now I checked him again. He's gone back, and so I've gone back to the middle to where we were. So he's decided it's time to try and become active, and he's played rook a6, willing to give up the c pawn to get the a pawn, giving me two clear pass pawns now. So rook takes pawn, rook takes pawn. But the bar has dropped. The bar has dropped and it's looking better for black. So I've got to watch what I'm doing here. c4, rook a3 check, king e4, a5. So he's pushing his pass pawn. So I need to get behind that with a rook check, king g7, and rook a6. I can guard that pawn while I'm pushing on my own pawns. Rook to c3. So he's willing to give up that one for the a pawn for the c pawn, but I don't want to give up the c pawn, obviously. So he's either I was going to say, you either got to protect that a pawn again or go after the other pawns. So he's gone after the f pawn now. Now I can go back and forward with him attacking these two pawns all the time, so I'm going to let him have that one and take the a pawn. So he takes on f4 check. Now I didn't go forward because of the check with the force off possibly the rooks, and it would probably give me a one game if I did, because I'm not sure if he'd get his king over there in time, but it'd be a one game for me anyway. So I decided I'd go back to king c3 because I can hide behind the pawn by going to b4. So he's gone after my pawn on h2. I protect it with the rook on a2. He's moving his king up now, so I want to make sure it can't cross that middle. So I've moved the rook across to d2. I think that's a good move. It's put it in the right place where my king is concerned. So he checks me on h3 and I go b4. So there we are. I can hide behind that pawn now. And so he pins that pawn so I can't move it. So I move the king up. Check. Yeah, he plays king to f7. I think that's just to see what's going to happen here. Move the pawn on again. Rook to h5. Again, pinning the pawn. So I move the king on again. Rook check. Move the pawn on again. And it's really, really great now. I've got a completely won game. If you look at the bar on the right, there's just a tiny little speck of black at the top there. I've got a 16-point plus here. This game's now completely and utterly won. But like I've always said, you've got to know how to win a one game. So let's see what happens. Rook down to h3. King into c7. He's got behind the pawn. Now, I think I should have played rook to c2 instead of moving the king. And then I could be behind the pawn and just push it home. Even if he's checking my king to death, I could still come up the board after that rook and make it move and then queen. But I wanted to keep that king from getting over there. That's the thing. So I decided to go this way, but I really do think instead of king c7, rook c2 is better. So I move my king over it and he checks. So this can't continue, so I went king to c8. Now he's gone back to try and attack the pawn, which I've moved on. So we're really getting close now, but the bar has dropped a bit down to... oh, it's gone right up now, after king c8. And then he's played rook to... played c7. That's... well, I won't even bother saying what it is. It's very, very high. So he's moved his king in a bit closer. That stops me being able to just queen by moving my king either side. So I took the rook down to check him, moved the king up, and I took the pawn. So he's lost another pawn doing this. He's moved the rook back. I'm pushing that pawn as well. It's going up towards the right side now. And I played rook d7 again. And now the difference here is I can just play king to d8 and he's got to give up his rook for the queen to b. And in which case he saw this and he resigned. So that was the game with Michael Passmore, a good friend of mine. He was such a strong player back in the old days. He was about 1900 plus, but of course he got older and he got diminished in strength, but you could still see occasionally little flashes of moves that he played which were good. But thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the game, and I'll be back with you very soon with some more. Alright, so good night everyone, see you soon, and thank you for everyone who's been subscribing and following the games, and anyone who's watching for the first or second time, please stay with the games. There are some good ones. Can you please, if possible, look at the playlist? There are many games on there that have hardly had any views at all, just a couple, and some of those are the best ones that I've played. So try and have a look at the playlist, and there's other stuff on there as well, including the old BBC Master Games. There's some of them on there, and also the South Bristol Chess Club Championship 2013, which was tremendous. That's video form. So thank you. See you again soon. Thank you very much. Bye.